CountryWide CONNECT, connecting farmers and growers to what they need to know to grow. Your daily innovative rural show with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.
Sounds amazing. Hey, we've got our next guest on the line. We are going, excuse my notes, Dr. Paul Bennett, who is the portfolio leader for Integrated Bioenergy at the Bioeconomy Science Institute. As we are looking at fuel security and the growing discussion about New Zealand overlooking a solution that we have at the moment, it's bringing light around some solutions. Now, Paul, we're talking about woody biomass here today. There's a lot of interesting discussions I've heard in this space, and particularly my first question is, will we have enough to be able to transition away from our diesel reliance?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, we will have enough. To transition away from a whole host of fossil fuels, whether it's coal or liquid fuels, yes, we'll have enough to at least start the journey.
Well, one thing we can do is grow trees, right? So woody biomass, what is it? What are we talking about?
You got it. It's trees. It's trees, and it's the residues that we leave in the forest when we harvest trees. And it's those low-grade industrial logs, these small logs that full of knots that are exported to China, for instance. So it's all that sort of material that could be used to replace coal or even to produce liquid fuels.
Slash is the term, isn't it? That we hear that a lot.
Yeah, that's only part of it. That's about 33%, about a third of the material we think is available. Yes, it's the slash, it's the forest residues. Another about a third or 40% is those low-grade logs that are exported to China or other countries, but predominantly China. And then there's other materials like sawmill residues and excess pulp logs, etc.
What investment is needed in infrastructure in New Zealand to be able to turn the slash into a usable product, and relatively quickly?
Of course, there is investment, and it will require quite a substantial amount. I don't have a number off the top of my head, but you know, the fossil fuel industry has been developed over hundreds of years, and there's been substantial investment over time gone into it, and that's investment from both the private sector and the public sector. And we have to start that journey with bioenergy. It will be a little bit more expensive than the fossil fuels that we're used to, but we have to start the journey.
Paul, what's the process then? What's the opportunity here? We know we've got the raw material, but where do we go, and how's this scalable?
We need those champions. So we are starting to see more of an appetite towards a use of biomass to produce heat, or so-called process heat. So we're seeing Fonterra, for instance, converting some of their factories, their dairies, over to woody biomass from coal. We're seeing Genesis Energy talking about biomass for electricity. We're even hearing Air New Zealand really interested in producing aviation fuels from wood. So we need those champions, and we need the investment to get those first plants of a kind running.
I sat next to an electrician who was doing a lot of the boiler refits for our processes, and he gave me some interesting insight with regards to the efficiency of heat conversion from biomass versus electric. It's not being very well supported either by Fonterra. They say one thing and then they do the other. So realistically, to get that support, we'd need these major players to support a mission like this. Yeah,
well, I mean, you need to talk to Fonterra to get the details, but they certainly have converted plants over to biomass use. The first one they did was Tiamutu, converted over to biomass pellets. They're doing another couple of plants at the moment.
And where are they sourcing the biomass from, Paul? Because I don't believe it's New Zealand.
Oh, they are. It's New Zealand-derived biomass. The first plant, they were using Nature's Flame in Taupo. that make these biomass pellets, and so that was the source of their feedstock for that first plant. They're looking at wood chip at other plants, both in the North Island and South Island. So it is all New Zealand derived biomass.
Well, obviously at the moment, we've got the issue with fuel supplies coming in from around the world. Are we talking about a product here that can practically replace a biofuel that could replace diesel?
My belief is biomass at the moment is limited. It's, as I said, we've got enough to make a real good start, and we should be targeting those hard to abate sectors and the easy sectors, the sectors that can use biomass easily. So process heat is one of those, and that is starting to happen. We're sort of moving down that track. In terms of liquid fuels, however, we really should be focusing on those really hard to abate sectors, so-called hard to abate, where there are fewer alternatives, such as aviation fuels and such as marine biofuels.
Okay. And the other question I've got then is, and we've seen a massive pushback from the ag sector when it came to carbon forestry. Are we going to see something similar? Will this come at the cost of food production?
We don't believe so. At the moment, we're talking about using the, as I said, the residues and those low-grade logs that are already being produced. So that's where we start. If we do need to develop more biomass plantations, then that would still be on low-grade land. We wouldn't be looking at replacing food production. I mean, from a sustainability perspective, that's the last thing we'd want to do.
Paul, what's the connection that you have with the forestry sector and the Wood Processors and Manufacturers Association? Because I've heard the opposite. I've heard from forestry owners that we would need to plant forestry specifically for biomass because there is not enough.
There is enough to get going. Certainly, if we want to replace all the coal that we're burning in New Zealand, there's absolutely enough. We're talking about having over 7 million cubic meters of biomass available in New Zealand, and that's in a bad year. To replace the coal, or most of the coal, we'd need about 2 million tons.
And the other part about it too, Paul, is it's usually on very steep, inaccessible skid sites to be able to source this slash as well. So an entire new industry to be able to do that, harvesting that, is over and above the forestry production cycle.
So we're not talking about taking everything, all the harvest. We're talking about, where the logs are processed in forest, those skid sites that are accessible, then we could take that material. But as I said earlier, we're also talking about those low-grade logs that are exported to China. That's 40% of that 7 million tons, and there's already a supply chain in place that hauls those logs out of the forest through towns to the ports.
Yeah, so exactly. It is literally about converting these low value logs that we still painfully produce into something that's of high value for us that we're turning around and importing.
And they're probably using it over in China for exactly the same thing, would be my guess.
Oh, no, they're using it really for single use. They're using it in the construction industry, so for concrete pouring, and the construction industry is in decline in China. And also they're looking at being self-sufficient in those sort of logs in fibre by 2030. So the market for them will decline, and if you talk to some of those foresters, they're desperate for an alternative market for those logs.
Very interesting stuff. Thank you so very much for joining us, Dr. Paul Bennett from the Bioeconomy Science Institute.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Paul.
CountryWide CONNECT, connecting farmers and growers to what they need to know to grow. Your daily innovative rural show with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.